Hello and welcome to today's webinar. I am Trevor, the Communications Manager for the Canadian Cancer Survivor Network. Thank you to everyone for attending today's webinar, which continues the fall leg of our 2023 series. If you're new to our webinar, a little background on our group. CCSN is an organization working with cancer patients and survivors to learn about the complexity of our health system, connect with others to plan action, and to act on those plans to better create outcomes for a healthy survivorship. Please visit our website to find plenty of information like news, events, and of course, our webinar series. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on YouTube, and a link will be provided by the email that you registered with, along with a link to the slides provided with this presentation. And we'll have a quick Q&A session at the end, and if you would like, there is a tab on your sidebar on your screen. You can put your questions in the chat at the end or whenever you have them, and we shall address them at the end of the presentation. And so without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. David Ma. He is a full professor in the Department of Human Health and Nutritional Sciences and director of the Guelph Family Health Study at the University of Guelph. He completed his doctoral training at the University of Alberta in medical sciences, focusing on healthy fats and dairy for breast cancer prevention, followed by a further postdoctoral research on diet and cancer, also at the University of Alberta. He pursued additional postdoctoral training at Texas A&M University, investigating the role of omega-3s and folate in colon cancer. Then in 2004, he accepted a position as an assistant professor at the University of Toronto before moving to the University of Guelph in 2007. And so without any further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Dr. David Ma for his presentation, Omega-3 Fats for Health and Cancer, Breast Cancer Prevention.
Thank you, Trevor, for that kind introduction. And first, I'd like to thank the Canadian Cancer Survivor Network for the wonderful invitation to share with you some of our work on omega-3s and their role in the health and breast cancer prevention. So let's just start here and, whoops, why is not, there we go. So food is one of those things that we are inundated with in terms of social media. It's something we do every day. We have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and snacks. But there's a huge interest in terms of food in our lives. Thinking about how we relate to food, food and in terms of, for example, social media. Food and cats seem to be the two most popular things that we take pictures of and videos that we see online. Food has an important role in our health. We often take this for granted. We probably take care of our cars a better care of our cars than our own bodies, which are very complex machines. There's a lot of interest in terms of the role of different types of foods and nutrients in our health. And so today we're going to talk about the role of healthy fats in breast cancer, which is the area of focus of my research program. So just to orientate everyone around breast cancer statistics, globally, cancer is the second leading cause of death. These are some stats from 2015. It's the second leading cause of death relative to cardiovascular disease, which is number one, and contributes to 8.8 and 18 million deaths respectively back in 2015. And among female cancers, breast cancer is the leading cause of death worldwide, which has increased tremendously by 21% from 2005 to 2015. And these rates continue to climb. Looking at projected cases of cancer by 2032, 25 million new cases of cancer are estimated to occur every year globally. But even way back then in 2014, 2015, we've known that lifestyle factors contribute to cancer risk. Certainly smoking for lung cancer, but there's growing recognition of the role for diet, obesity, physical activity as other lifestyle factors that contribute to cancer risk. In fact, it's been quantified, and this report is from the World Cancer Research Fund. It's been quantified and estimated that 30 to 40% of all cancers are preventable by food and nutrition. And that's quite astounding. That's not low single digits. A third or more of cancers can be prevented simply by taking care of and paying a little bit more attention to the foods that we eat in our and part of our diet. So those are, as I presented to you in the first few slides, some global statistics. Here are some Canadian statistics. And so over the last 25 years, if we look at prevalence of cancer in Canada, the two major ones are breast cancer in women and prostate cancer in men. And then the third on this list is colorectal in both men and women. So certainly breast cancer is a major concern in Canada. And last year, there was a really important publication that came out by the Canadian Cancer Society, specifically looking at the role of or contribution of different lifestyle factors as they relate to cancer risk. And shown here and highlighted in the box, it states very clearly in this research study that about 4 in 10 cancers can be prevented through healthy living and policies that protect the health of Canadians. That's quite astounding and reaffirms our long-standing awareness of the fact that diet, as part of lifestyle factors, contribute to contribute to cancer risk. If we look here on this infographic, we see here that, for instance, low vegetable intake contributes to 3,500 cases of cancer per year, and sedentary behavior is 3,200. So diet and lifestyle are on par with are definitely important factors that influence our cancer risk, and we should not be complacent about it. If we look at very specific nutrients in a diet, and this is a publication by the Global Burden of Disease a few years ago, looking specifically at specific nutrients that contribute to cancer risk. We see that diets high in sodium, diets low in vegetables, fruits and vegetables, whole grains, nuts and seeds contribute to increased risk. But importantly, on this list is also the recognition that foods that contain omega-3s, such as seafood, contribute to increased risk. So on the flip side, what this means is that having more fruits and vegetables in a diet, having more whole grains, nuts and seeds, and having more omega-3s in a diet will decrease the risk for cancers. So in my lab, we're very much interested in the role of omega-3s in health. Specifically, we've been asking a couple of questions. Firstly, is there a causal link between omega-3 fatty acids and breast cancer? And then secondly, what is the role of individual omega-3 fatty acids? A lot of the work that has been done to date in the scientific literature has simply shown that there is a relationship, but importantly in research, we need to demonstrate that there is a causal link. So association is not causality, and so we need to be able to determine the specific link so that we know for sure that omega-3s are related to breast cancer, and in this case, a beneficial nutrient in the diet. And there are a number of different types of omega-3s, and we'll get to that in the next few slides. And so an important question then is, what is the individual role of different types of omega-3s as there are different types and found in different foods as well. So this is data from 1999, simply showing that there is a linear relationship between dietary fat and cancer. And this is some of the earliest evidence highlighting the important role of and contribution of dietary fat to cancer risk. And so Canada is up here in the top right, showing that with increasing dietary intake of fat, grams per day, the the rate of cancer is also dose dependently increased. And so this led to more work in terms of looking at not only the quantity of fat in the diet and how that contributes to cancer, but then also the quality of the fat that is being consumed. And of great interest are the omega-3s. So what are omega-3s? Well, there are different types of fats in our diet. We have, so on this slide, it breaks it down into saturated fatty acids that we find in a diet, such as palmitic acid and stearic acid. We also have trans fats. There are partially hydrogenated trans fats that are produced through that are man-made. Currently, they are banned in Canada and US, so less of a concern. And then there are also naturally occurring trans fats. And in my doctoral work, we showed that naturally occurring trans fats are actually may have a health benefit in terms of preventing breast cancer. Then we have monosaturated fatty acids, or MUFAs. These are the omega-9s, and so you would find monosaturated fats in oils such as olive oil that are very enriched in monosaturated fats, specifically oleic acid, hence the name olive oil. And then we also have our polyunsaturated fats. And so there are two families. These are the omega-6s and omega-3s. These are essential fats that we have to get in our diet. The two specific essential fatty acids are linoleic acid, LA, and then abbreviated LA, and then alpha-linolenic acid. So these polyunsaturated fats are typically found in plant-based oils, such as canola. So both omega-6 and omega-3s are found in canola, but canola, for example, is a rich source of omega-3s in the Canadian diet. A more type of oil, such as flaxseed oil, is even more enriched in plant-based omega-3 alpha-linolenic acid. These fatty acids can then be metabolized in the body and converted to longer chain fatty acids known as eicosapentaenoic acid and docosahexaenoic acid, EPA and DHA. And so these are the acronyms that you'd see going down the supplement aisle in the grocery store. So you see a bottle labeled omega-3s, high in EPA and DHA. And so these are known as the fish oil type of omega-3s, and very much rich in foods such as salmon or the supplements. So here's a slide that provides a little bit more detail about what exactly are we looking at in terms of omega-3 fatty acids. On top, we have alpha-linolenic acid. It's an 18-carbon fatty acid with 3 double bonds. And structurally, we call it an N3 because the double bond is located 3 carbons from the end of the molecule. And so this is the characteristic that defines omega-3 fatty acids. And so alpha-linolenic acid can be found in plants, oils such as canola and flax, highly enriched. And then we have our plant-based, then we have our fish oil-based omega-3s, EPA and DHA. They're longer chain. So EPA has 20 carbons and 5 double bonds, and then DHA has 22 carbons and 6 double bonds. And they're called polyunsaturated because they have more than 1 double bond. And uniquely, the first double bond is 3 carbons from the methyl end or end of the molecule. And the presence of all these double bonds make this molecule very powerful in how it has a biological role in our cells. We find ALA, EP, and DHA in all of our tissues, specifically in the cell membranes, and it's within the cell membranes that they exert some of their biological effects related to how cells function. All right, so want to do next is to present to you some of our work that highlights and demonstrates that there truly is an association between omega-3 fatty acids and breast cancer. And this is important. If we can show a causal link, then we have more definitive evidence and we're more confident in the benefits of omega-3s in our diet. So in my lab, we do a lot of basic research using experimental models, particularly genetic models, genetic mouse models. They're really powerful tools that help us better understand the biology of what's going on, and we use it in a nutritional context. So in my lab, we have this genetic model called the FAT1 mouse, and we use it to study the biological functionality of omega-3 fatty acids. And this is denoted as N3-PUFA for simplicity. And so this genetic model allows us to study the biological effects of omega-3s. As I mentioned to you before, omega-3s are essential fatty acids, and because they're essential, we need to get it from the diet. And the challenge with that is the potential confounder in terms of being able to specifically identify the dietary effects of omega-3s, because it's coming from the diet, and we eat food, not nutrients. So we use this genetic model to study the specific role of omega-3s. And this is possible because this mouse has an extra gene in it that allows it to make its own omega-3s rather than getting it from the diet. And so it can take omega-6 fatty acids and convert them to omega-3. And so what I'm showing you here is some chromatograms that allow us to both detect and identify specific fatty acids. And in the top panel here, we have a normal mouse. It consumes omega-6 fatty acids, and then we can see an abundant amount of omega-6 here shown in blue. And with our FAT1 mouse, it carries this extra gene, and this gene actually comes from a flatworm depicted here. And so it allows it to take an omega-6 fatty acid and convert it to an omega-3. And so the omega-3s we detect as these extra peaks here shown in red. So it can make ALA, EPA, and DHA, which is unique in this specific mouse model that doesn't happen in humans. Another model that we use in our lab is called the HER2 breast cancer model. And it goes by the specific name of MMTV-New NDL-YD5. But basically, this is a model of HER2 breast cancer. HER2 breast cancer occurs, it's an aggressive type of breast cancer and occurs in roughly 25% of all human breast cancer cases. And so we use this aggressive model to demonstrate that if there is a benefit of omega-3s, and if it can be a benefit in this aggressive type of breast cancer, and then it certainly would bode well in terms of other types of less aggressive forms of breast cancer. So just to orientate you in terms of what we did, the design of this genetic model is where we breed these MMTV HER2 mice with the FAT1, and then we can produce 4 different types of progeny. And from this pairing, we can produce wild-type mice. These are normal and healthy. They actually do not carry either of the traits. Some of the offspring will carry either the FAT1 gene or the MMTV, and then 1/4 of the mice will carry both traits. So they will spontaneously develop a form of breast cancer that mimics human breast cancer, the HER2 type, and also carry the gene that allows them to make omega-3 fatty acids. And then we follow the offspring and quantify the development of mammary tumors. So in the study study results that I'm going to present to you, we essentially have two arms. We have a genetic arm, just as I showed you, where we have these offspring that develop mammary tumors and can synthesize omega-3 fatty acids. And they synthesize it because we have omega-6 in the diet, and they convert it over to omega-3s. Then we also have a dietary arm where we have non-genetically modified mice, and we feed them a diet that contains omega-3s. And this is a diet that contains 3% menhaden fish oil. So to orientate you to this slide, we are quantifying the number of tumors that develop over time, over the course of 20 weeks. And we have three groups here. On the top here, we have our MMTVs. So these are the mice that develop tumors spontaneously. The second line in solid black are the hybrid mice. These are the mice that spontaneously develop mammary tumors and are also capable of synthesizing omega-3s. And then the bottom dash line are the same MMTV mice that produce tumors, spontaneously develop tumors, and are given dietary source of omega-3s. And so what we see quite clearly is that over time, the genetic model in the middle behaves very similarly as to mice that are provided the omega-3s from the dietary arm. And both of these groups have far fewer mammary tumors over this time course. So by the end of the study, the mice that are given omega-3s or produce their own omega-3s have roughly a third or a quarter to a third fewer tumors. So this is really exciting work because it's the first evidence of a causal linkage comparing groups that make omega-3s genetically to a group of mice that receive omega-3s from the diet. And this is important from a scientific perspective because if we can show an outcome from using multiple different approaches, that gives us greater confidence that what we're observing between exposure and an outcome is a causal linkage. So in addition to the number of tumors, which were significantly reduced, we also saw a similar effect in terms of the size of the tumors. And again, we see that the mice that were exposed to omega-3s, either producing omega-3s genetically or from the diet, that they're much lower than the mice relative to our control mice that do not get exposed to omega-3s. And again, it's reduced by half or more. So that was one of our earlier studies to simply establish the causal linkage between providing or exposing omega-3s and breast cancer outcomes. And then the next question that we asked is more better. So in our genetic model and our dietary model, it was just a fixed amount of omega-3s. And so the next question we asked is more better. Is there a dose-dependent response? And so this question was asked in a study where we fed the same MMTV mice different levels of omega-3s. We had three different levels: 0, 3, and 9%. And so these are increasing amounts of omega-3s on a weight basis in the diet. And just to orientate you to this slide, we're looking at tumor development over the same 20-week time course. And we're looking at the proportion of mice that remain tumor-free over that time. And so what we can see here is that in the solid black line, far fewer mice remain tumor-free over over the time course. And with increasing amounts of omega-3s in the diet at the 3 and 9% level, tripling them, what we see is that more mice stay tumor-free over time, and the 9% group were most protected over that time course. And so this was really encouraging data to show that with having no omega-3s in the diet, it is not helpful, but as one increases the amount of omega-3s in the diet, it increases the beneficial outcomes. Similarly, we measured the size of the tumors, and again, we saw that in addition to delaying the onset of tumors with increasing amounts of omega-3s in the diet, we saw that they also resulted in much smaller tumors as well over that same time period. So this bit of evidence where we demonstrated a causal linkage in a genetic mouse model, and also showing that with increasing amounts of omega-3s in a diet in an experimental model is beneficial. We always get the question about relevance of these experimental models. How does that relate to the human condition? And so I'm showing here showing here the results of a meta-analysis conducted a few years ago, where they took a large number of human cohort studies and simply asked the question, if there is increasing amounts of omega-3s in a diet, is that protective and beneficial in terms of reducing the risk of breast cancer? And so in this study, they collated the findings from 21 independent human cohort studies. And what they found was that they found that there was a 5% reduction in breast cancer risk for each 100 milligrams of EPA and DHA. So, so this is really exciting evidence to support our animal work, in that more omega-3s in the diet is protective against breast cancer. One of the other questions that has been asked of late, or we tried to ask and answer, is the question about which type of omega-3s is better in the diet. Is plant-based better, or fish oil-based, fish or seafood or supplements better? And so we have the answer in terms of yes, omega-3s are beneficial, more is beneficial, and then this question next is, which form is there a difference in the form of omega-3s? So we looked at so one of my graduate students examined this question of whether plant-based or fish seafood-based omega-3s are better for breast cancer prevention, and shown here on this slide is some evidence to suggest that both are beneficial, but there's a little bit more benefit in terms of fish oil-based omega-3s. And so on this slide, what we're looking at are structures called terminal end buds. So these are structures that are biomarkers that we study in the mouse mammary gland. They are potential sites where cancers can develop, and we look at these structures during the pubertal period of development. And so the hypothesis goes, if there are more of these structures, there's potentially greater risk down later in life as potential sites for the development of tumors. And so in this study, we looked at 4 different conditions. We had our control group with safflower oil high in omega-6, and 2 different doses of plant-based omega-3s from flaxseed, 3% and 10%. And then we have our fish oil group containing 3% menhaden oil. And what we see here in terms of total numbers of terminal end buds, there are fewer of these terminal end buds in either the flaxseed fed groups and the fish oil, but there seems to be a greater benefit for the fish oil at 3% and the highest dose of flaxseed. And when the data is normalized for density, we see something similar, and it's only at the highest dose of flaxseed oil that's equivalent to the fish oil group. So looking at the tumor-free status, we see something similar. This is a busy slide, but basically it shows us that with increasing amounts of plant-based omega-3s and 3 and 10%, the curves shift towards the right. So as the curves shift further to the right, it tells us that more of the mice are tumor-free over the 20-week period. And the most beneficial condition or treatment group were the mice that were fed either the 10% flax or the 3% fish oil group. And just to round out in terms of the size and number of tumors, again, we see that there's a nice dose response in terms of relative to our control group. The 10% safflower, our 3% flax and 10% flax decrease the size and number of tumors, and the most effective group is the 3% menhaden oil. And so all of this data nicely shows and provides evidence that both types of omega-3s, whether it be plant-based or fish and seafood, are beneficial in the diet. But what we have evidence now is that in terms of relative potency, fish oil based seafood and fish oil based omega-3s are roughly 1/3 to 1/8 potent. And sorry, let me repeat that. The plant-based omega-3s are 1/3 to 1/8 less potent relative to fish oil-based omega-3s. And so why does this matter? It matters because when we look at the North American diet, most of the omega-3s that we consume in the North American diet come from plant-based omega-3s. And so what this evidence highlights is that yes, plant-based omega-3s are good to have in the diet, but if you want more potency, then you can get a bit more potency from consuming more omega-3s from seafood or supplements that contain EPA and DHA. So in summary, what I wanted to highlight in this presentation is that lifelong exposure to omega-3s influences the prevention of breast cancer in our experimental models, and that there is a dose response relationship. So more omega-3s in a diet, whether it be plant-based or fish and seafood-based omega-3s, is good for you. And we also show that if there is there is a bit of a difference between plant-based and fish and seafood-based omega-3s. Both are good, but EPA and DHA from fish and seafood is a little bit better. And with that, I want to thank the Canadian Cancer Survivor Network again for the wonderful opportunity to share with you our research over the years on the role of omega-3s in breast cancer prevention. So with that, happy to take questions. I wanted to make sure that we had ample time at the end to address any questions that you might have. Thank you. Oh, sorry, Trevor, I can't hear you.
There we go. Sorry, thank you very much for that presentation. It was very eye-opening, and it's actually very interesting to see the effect of omega-3 on breast cancer on the body. Now, if you guys have any questions, there is a questions tab on the menu on the right side of your screen. One thing though, it might be a little bit unrelated to what we were talking about. I kind of want to talk a little bit about how you and our organization, the Canadian Cancer Survivor Network, came into contact, and it was through actually your research on, of all things, aspartame. And also you talked a little bit about your research with the family health team. So if you kind of want to fill in a little bit of the gap with that, what was kind of the research around that in the family health team?
Sure. So in our Guelph Family Health Study, just to provide a little context there. So in the Guelph Family Health Study, we're very much interested in determinants of health. So we're very much interested in diet, physical activity, sleep, some of the social aspects of that relate to parenting practices. And so we're a primary prevention cohort study. So we're very much interested in keeping our families and children healthy from the get-go, rather than be a treatment type of cohort. And so some of the work that I've been involved in the family study as it relates to understanding the role of dietary fat. We've measured omega-3s in the diet of our children and the parents. And what we see is that there's room for improvement. So current recommendations related to omega-3 intake are somewhere in the neighborhood of, depending upon which authoritative body, somewhere between 200 and 500 milligrams per day. And in the research that we just published this past year, what we've shown is that children and families are not meeting those recommendations. So they're in terms of actual intake, we found that families are consuming less than 100 milligrams per day. And there's quite a bit of range there, and they tended to be very much on the low side of things. So what's that telling us is that while there is awareness of the benefits of omega-3s for health, not only cancer but heart health is also widely disseminated in the literature. There is still a need to help individuals figure out how to get more omega-3s in our diet, and this would help not only for breast cancer prevention, but then also reducing the risk of other types of chronic diseases such as heart disease. As your other question around aspartame, we've also been doing research on sugar intake, and aspartame is a sugar substitute. And intuitively, we suspect that children are probably getting a little bit more sugar in their diet than we'd like. And so what we did was a comprehensive dietary analysis and published this result showing that a significant number of preschool age children are far exceeding what we recommend by Health Canada and the World Health Organization as it relates to sugar intake. The story around artificial sweeteners such as aspartame is very complex. And so we also endeavored to quantify the amounts of artificial sweeteners being consumed in the diets of young children. And so this is actually a positive finding in that most families with young children are not consuming artificial sweeteners. So it's recommended in this age group to limit limit exposure. And so what we're seeing is that there is families are conscientious around limiting the consumption of products that contain artificial sweeteners. And then at the same time, aspartame was in the news in terms of its potential role in cancer. And so specific to aspartame, what the WHO released in terms of statement, they highlighted the fact that aspartame is now on the list of potential cancer-causing agents, and so the messaging is a bit more nuanced than that. the level of evidence and amount of evidence is still low and weak. So yes, there is some evidence to suggest, and so there's a difference between hazard and risk. So what they've highlighted is that there's the potential hazard, so that's more of a yes/no kind of response. But then the other consideration is relative risk. So you can have something that is hazardous, but then low risk. And with aspartame, it's relatively low risk. In order to, for example, reach a limit where there's health concerns, using diet soft drinks as an example, you would have to consume in excess of 20 plus cans of whatever's favorite diet drink in order to reach a level that would be of health concern. So just like driving a car, there is a potential hazard when you drive a car, but then the risk is low because we have speed limits, we have safety, we have seatbelts and other things that help keep us safe. So with aspartame, the current messaging is that, yes, there is some concern, but unless you're drinking over 20 cans of whatever diet drink, the risk is relatively low. But nonetheless, I think it should give us pause in terms of thinking about all the things that we are consuming in our diet.
Mm-hmm. All right, we got a couple of questions, and once again, if you have a question, just write it down into the questions tab on the right side. And a lot of these are also very much specifically about certain types of food and certain types of food and what is good for that. So Barb asks, what is the best source of Menhaden oil, or eating a specific fish?
Sure. So we use Menhaden oil for research purposes. What I recommend to folks in terms of getting your omega-3s is choose food first. And why food first? Well, food such as salmon, that's a simple go-to type of fish for omega-3s. Not only are you going to get the healthy omega-3s from eating the salmon, but then you're also getting all the other beneficial nutrients from whole food. And so so salmon is a rich source of lean protein, and so that's another example of why whole food is good. If you have, I know some individuals do not like fish and seafood, so then choose a supplement that is high in EPA and DHA. So you can find all of these in the supplement aisles in the grocery store. What I would recommend is to buy them, pick a product that is from a reputable company. Stick with the name brand types of supplements as their products would contain the highest quality types of omega-3s for purchase. So there are also other sources of omega-3s. So you can get omega-3s from eggs. And so these are specially reared chicken that are fed flax. And so the chickens are able to convert the flax plant-based omega-3 ALA into the EPA and DHA. So that's another source of omega-3s in a diet. Almonds, avocado, they're also rich sources of omega-3s as a source of plant-based omega-3s. I should mention, for individuals who are vegetarian, vegan, the supplements are considered a plant source of omega-3s. So if that's of a concern or criteria, then the supplements are good for both meat eaters and plant eaters.
Excellent. Next question is, what type of oil, canola, olive, is best for everyday use? Is there any difference in use of dressing versus cooking oil?
Right, a great question. So so in terms of cooking, canola oil is a good one. Has a slightly higher smoke point than olive oil. Olive oil is great because it's high in the monounsaturated fats containing oleic acid. It doesn't have omega-3s in it, but canola oil and flax are and soy. Canola, soy, and flax are the three oils that are highest in omega-3, plant-based omega-3s, and flax being the highest. So in terms of cooking, canola oil would be the one that would be preferable because it has the higher smoke point, and so the olive oil would be good for other purposes like dressings.
All right, Jocelyn asks, do we see less breast cancer in populations who consume fish frequently based on culture or geographic location?
Great question. So the meta-analysis that I showed earlier is the latest evidence that demonstrates the dose response, the benefits of having more omega-3s in the diet. And so early days of this research looking at dietary fat and cancer was quite ambiguous, and as more and more studies were conducted, especially in countries where they had more fish and seafood intake in Asian countries, it further strengthened the evidence that there is a dose response benefit in terms of more omega-3s in the diet. And so, yeah, the answer is yes. The best evidence we have in the human context comes from countries where fish and seafood is more prevalent.
Excellent. Josh, there's been a lot of questions about supplements. Another one that I have, but omega-3 supplements, what is the thought on them? A lot of people have been wondering if it's better, if it's anything to do, if it's better to do a whole bunch of foods with it. A lot of people are just kind of wondering what's the final say on supplements versus the food.
Yeah, so the rule of thumb is if you can eat whole food, that would be the go-to approach first. As I mentioned earlier, eating whole foods has the benefit of eating other healthful nutrients in addition to the omega-3s. And then eating whole foods is also the additional benefit of that is you're eating a meal usually with your family and friends. So there's the social context and the benefit there. So we can get omega-3s from different types of whole foods, but if your diet is if you're feeling that your diet is lacking in omega-3s, then certainly taking a supplement is perfectly fine. What you want to look at in terms of the label is that it contains EPA and DHA. Usually, a third or half of it would be a good indication of high quality omega-3s. So the supplement contains the extract of the oils from the fish and seafood, so it's not 100% EPA and DHA. And so certain companies have technologies that concentrate it a bit more. So looking at the amounts of EPA and DHA on the label would be a good thing to take note of in terms of comparing different brands. And what we're recommending is 200 to 500 milligrams per day. That often works out to 2 or 3 capsules per day. If you're getting omega-3s from the diet, then it's the rule of thumb is 2 servings of fatty fish per week is the current recommendation there.
That actually leads nicely to our next question. What is the best ratio of DHA to EPA?
So most of the fish and so when we look at fish and seafood and supplements, there's usually a little bit more EPA than DHA. And so there is a growing interest in terms of trying to figure out if one type of omega-3 is better than the other one. So if we compare plant versus fish and seafood, it's easy to get different sources of these. So If we're looking at plant-based omega-3s, it's canola, soy, and flax. But then if we're looking at trying to figure out if EPA is better than DHA, then we have research grade types to kind of figure that out. And it is possible to get purified EPA, but that's by prescription only. And that's targeted for lowering triglyceride levels for heart health. So for the average consumer, I would say that getting more omega-3s is the priority, because most Canadians are not getting the 200 to 500 milligram. It could be as low as 10 milligrams per day is what most folks are getting in their diet as it relates to EPA and DHA. So first and foremost, just get more omega-3s in your diet, and then once you get a little bit more in the diet, then you can focus on trying to figure out if you need more plant-based or more efficient seafood-based omega-3s.
All right, we have time for about 2 more questions. Angela is asking about consistency. How often should you eat salmon to get enough omega-3s, i.e. is once per week enough? Yeah,
so the current recommendation is 2 times per week. And I totally get it. There's challenges in terms of we have busy lives and schedules. So getting omega-3s from a variety of sources is a potential strategy, is a great strategy because it provides variety in the diet. So we shouldn't necessarily be focused entirely in fish and seafood. As I mentioned, omega-3 eggs is a source, almonds, avocado, or other sources. And so being mindful to get some omega-3s in the diet per week is a good thing, because most Canadians are not getting any in the diet. So if you're getting one, great, that's a great start. And building that routine is the way to go.
All right, and final question before we let you go from Helen. What can be done to raise awareness among healthcare professionals to encourage a focus on dietary consideration versus strictly treatment protocols for cancer? As a cancer survivor, I was never given any recommendations regarding diet and prevention.
Yeah, and I think that starts from very young in terms of introducing the concept of diet as a beneficial strategy for prevention, not just cancer, but many other types of chronic diseases. So having that education from the get-go in the school system, educating doctors more. I know that there is a lot of conversations at the medical school level to have more hours of instruction related to the role of lifestyle factors, including nutrition, as part of their education to then share with their patients. Doctors have an important role, but oftentimes we don't see them for maintenance. We see them when we have a problem. And so I think we also need to do some work and think about how we approach our health in terms of a primary prevention strategy that can start, I think, very readily from the formative years, so that we can instill healthy habits, at least have that awareness that just like a car and a house, if you build it with quality components, it goes a long way to sustaining and ensuring that we have strong bodies for many years to come. And as compared to some houses these days, they're built very quickly with very inexpensive components. They look great when you move in, but then 5 years down the road, things start to fall apart. Whereas you compare some houses that are over 100 years old, built with high quality components, they're in great shape, right? And so by that analogy, if we can instill and impart this type of education early on in our education system, and also in the training of our healthcare providers, not just doctors, but also nurses, pharmacists. That goes a long way to spreading and sharing that knowledge, just like we're doing today in this webinar.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. If you guys have any questions for Dr. Ma, we can also facilitate that as well. Just email me the questions that you have, and we can send them his way. But for now, thank you very much, David. This has been a very eye-opening presentation, and thank you very much for taking the time to present these findings to us. This is very, very eye-opening.
Thank you.
All right, and now this is one in a series of webinars that we are presenting this fall. Our next one is actually happening next week, so to stay in the loop about webinars, visit our website or check your email for our e-blast. If you're not seeing emails in your inbox, different mail services use different inboxes for different things, so check your spam folder, your updates, all these other things, because we do use a third-party email service to make sure that you are on top of the newest and latest of our webinar series. And make sure you are subscribed to our newsletter on our website, and don't miss a thing that we're doing here at CCSN. All these webinars can be found at survivornet.ca/webinar or on our YouTube channel. So with that, I wish everyone a great afternoon, and I will see you guys on the next one.
Bye. Take care.